Access to Democracy is made possible by donations from the following organizations. Thomson Reuters, a global company with expertise and insight to unravel complex situations in the areas of law, tax, compliance, government, and media. Their worldwide network of journalists and editors keep customers up to speed on relevant global events. Crutchfield Dermatology, a full-service treatment center and Medi-Spa in Eagan. Their goal is to help you look good and feel great with beautiful skin. With service built around courtesy, dignity, and respect, Mayo-trained Dr. Charles Crutchfield personally treats each patient and is acknowledged as one of the nation's best physicians. Truestone Financial, with locations in Minnesota and Wisconsin, has proudly served its members since 1939. Truestone engages, educates, and supports its members to ensure they have the tools to empower their financial well-being. Truestone Financial, your neighborhood credit union. Learn more at truestone.org. Edina Eye Physicians and Surgeons, a division of Twin Cities Eye Consultants, has proudly served the Twin Cities for more than 55 years now in 7 convenient locations. Using the most advanced technology combined with human touch, Edina Eye offers comprehensive services and dedicated specialists committed to excellence with innovative procedures and expertise for the most advanced eye care.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Access to Democracy. I'm Steve Francisco. It's my pleasure to welcome to our studio a return visitor, Eagan City Council member Gary Hansen. Gary, welcome to our studio today.
Thank you for inviting me, Steve.
Our pleasure. So you and I were talking before the program began today that obviously we're in high campaign season, yes, and you have been out knocking on those doors. Tell us what you're hearing from your constituents as you go about door knocking here in Eagan.
Well, it's been a very reinforcing process for me just to be able to get out and talk with people, give them an invitation to visit with me about things that they might be concerned about or any issues they may have. And invariably, people are telling me, oh, we love it in Eagan. It's a great place to live. Keep doing what you're doing, and that's great to hear. I think we've worked hard to try to make Eagan the city that it is, and actually building on the great work that those before us did as Eagan was developing and trying to continue to make it a great place in which to live and play and work. So.
And it really seems as if when we talk about Eagan and start looking at other communities, not just around Minnesota, but rankings of best places to live in the country, Eagan usually makes a very good showing on those lists. Why do you think that is?
I think people really do enjoy the various amenities that we have here in Eagan. They love the parks, they love the green space. It's just a great place to be active. I get comments frequently by people who like to fish, and yeah, you can fish in Eagan. I mean, that's another opportunity you have. And we also have to recognize it's more than the city itself. We also hear about a great school system, and we have to acknowledge that too, because that draws people. And I have to put in a plug for the schools because my wife was a teacher for 25 years, so
very
I do
good.
Acknowledge that.
And something that's really important to a lot of people too, we'll talk about the amenities, having a good school system, having tremendous parks and trails, mountain biking trails nearby, the Dakota County Regional Park System. Right. All of these things add to the quality of life here. They also impact residents very directly in terms of maintaining high property values. I've noticed the complex that my wife and I live in, we're in a townhouse complex here in Eagan, and we had 3 homes that went up for sale this year. All 3 of them sold $20,000-$30,000 over the asking price, and they all sold within 24 to 48 hours. That's pretty remarkable.
And it's good to have a strong housing market. At the same time, it also presents challenges in terms of affordability. And over the years, we've tried to do things to promote affordability of housing. We've got a great relationship with the county's community development agency. We have a number of housing areas in the city where we have workforce housing and other affordable housing, because Eagan is the employment center of Dakota County. We have over 50,000 jobs here, people often tell me, I work in Eagan, I'd really like to live here, but I really can't afford it, you know. And so it's a challenge that we've been working on over the years, and we need to keep working at it to assure that people who want to live in Eagan can live in Eagan.
And you mentioned the development of our business base here in Eagan. A lot of companies have come here and have done very well in our community. And some of the big high-profile, not just high-profile organizations, Minnesota Vikings,
Right.
but other organizations, other companies that call Eagan home.
Yes.
And they've
Yes,
done very well here.
Location obviously is a great advantage for Eagan. I mean,
Right.
Our proximity to Minneapolis and St. Paul and to the airport has been very important to us. And we were very fortunate to be able to draw the interest of the Vikings. You know, we had that 200-acre parcel of land that was available to them. They needed to grow. It was ideal location for them. The Wilf brothers really wanted to be here and build what we're seeing now in terms of not just the Vikings facility, but everything that's going along with it, the housing that we're seeing being built, and the additional amenities.
And the
that we're gonna see
hotel
there.
there,
The
their
hotel there,
hotel,
yeah,
yeah.
correct. Yeah, that's I mean, it's just great. And in fact, as I was visiting with someone just the other day, they were just cleaning up the garage and getting ready to move out, and I said, I hope you're staying in Eagan. We're moving to Viking Lakes, so.
Let's talk a little bit further about housing, because we are in the midst of a major demographic change in our country, and Eagan is subject to this as well. We're seeing the aging of people like myself, the baby boom generation that are retiring. Some of them who are on the older end of the baby boom scope are moving into assisted living or senior housing. How is Eagan doing on that count in terms of providing affordable housing for seniors? And how do you see this demographic change impacting the city of Eagan over the next 5-10 years?
Well, the very first time that I ran for city council, that was one of the major issues that I ran on. You know, we are aging as a city, our population is aging, and we need to do things to be able to accommodate the lifestyle needs of an aging population. And one of those, of course, was housing. I think when I was elected to the council, there were maybe 2 or 3 senior living facilities in Eagan. Now we've got 7, 8, 9, and we got 2 or 3 more on the drawing board.
In the works.
And so I think that you know, that's a need that we've been able to meet. We have to do more. You can't stop. Not only that, but in addition to housing, you know, we need to provide additional amenities to keep the seniors in our community active and engaged and healthy. And the parks and recreation programs that we have, that's a big part of that too. And invariably, I talk to older people, and they say, yeah, we really appreciate what the city of Eagan is doing in terms of trying to accommodate our housing needs, as well as all the green space that you provide. And it has presented some challenges to us in terms of parks and recreation programs. We need to do things that you know, will support an active senior lifestyle, and I think that we're doing that. So.
Let's talk for a moment. You mentioned transportation too, that we're sort of in this ideal location where you have major interstates intersecting. We're near the airport, we're near the MOA, we're not far from either downtown of the major cities. You serve on something called the Minnesota Valley Transit Authority Board.
Correct.
What is your role on the Transit Authority Board? What does the Transit Authority Board do?
Yeah, MVTA provides public transit bus transportation in the South Metro area. I've been on that board for several years. I am also active on the Suburban Transit Association, which is the larger group that encompasses all 4 of the transit authorities, the suburban transit authorities, suburban transit providers in the Twin Cities region, including Eden Prairie and Plymouth and Maple Grove. And that is our lobbying organization, where we go to the legislature and we lobby for equitable funding and to fund our facilities and our operations, so that we can assure that we have a viable public transit system in the Twin Cities region. In MVTA south of the river, we've been doing a lot recently over the past year or so to try to improve local service, to get people from, not just from Eagan to Minneapolis and St. Paul, but Eagan to other suburbs, the suburb-to-suburb service that we have started.
Right, because you may live in Eagan, but you may have a job in Burnsville or Lakeville.
And you wouldn't have to, if somebody needs public transportation, you don't want to have to send them into Minneapolis or St. Paul and then back out somewhere else. And so if we can go directly to another suburb, we want to do that. Locally also, we've had great success with our MVTA Connect service, which is ride on demand. So that's been very popular, and it's becoming an increasing percentage of the ridership for MVTA. So
Very good.
I advocated for that, and it's great to see the growth over the past year.
Your latest update, and by the way, you seem to do a pretty good job of keeping your constituents well informed about your activities and those of your colleagues on the Eagan City Council. In your latest update, you mentioned that the city had some success in negotiating with the MAC and the FAA about changing making some changes to the departure pattern of aircraft coming off runway 17 at MSP, which tends to put air traffic right over the middle of the city of Eagan. Tell us more about that. What happened?
Well, and you're actually more of an expert than I am on that because of your involvement with the Airport Relations Commission. It was a process where we did some brainstorming with the commission and with citizens in Eagan to try to figure out what can we do to try to reduce airplane noise over the city. And it seemed that there was probably more use than should have been over that north-south route. It was going directly over homes in Eagan, and people were concerned about the noise levels at different times during the day. There were a number of proposals that were made. The FAA considered a number of the proposals, finally settled on one that it thought would be worthwhile attempting to do as a best practice, and they have started implementing it to reroute traffic that doesn't need to go over homes in Eagan. Send it in a different direction and make the skies a little bit quieter over Eagan. So that was a successful effort by residents of Eagan and the Airport Relations Committee to get the attention of the airport and the FAA to make some improvements there.
And I think what we've discovered over time, airport noise issues, people tend to notice it much more in the summer because they're outside and their windows are open and they hear it.
That's right.
The airplanes are still flying over other times of the year, but the airport's really important to us because it provides a lot of jobs for people who live in the city of Eagan. Obviously provides important service for the businesses that are located in Eagan, but it's also a quality of life issue for those of us who live here. So it's really a matter of finding the right balance.
You got to balance that, I guess I use the analogy. I said, you're going to have to put up with some of the noise from the airplanes overhead for these advantages that we have in terms of our proximity and the jobs that it offers to us, to people in our community. I grew up on a farm in South Dakota. We raised hogs, and my dad would say when the wind was blowing a certain direction and we could smell the hogs, that's the smell of money. And so I use that analogy and I say, you hear that noise overhead, that's the sound of money. So you got to balance it. We've attempted to do that. You can always try to do more, but we'll keep monitoring it and hopefully we'll control that noise level.
Right, and you made reference to I'm serving on the Eagan Airport Advisory Council with one of our guest hosts, Bill Raker, and several of us who are on that are in a position where we can make recommendations to the MAC about issues such as this. So we encourage residents, if they have concerns about issues affecting the airport, they can contact City Council, but they can also contact those of us on the Advisory Council.
And we really, the council really does appreciate the work that you do on the Airport Relations Commission, because you do kind of serve as a buffer between the residents and the council. And there's some expertise on your commission that we really appreciate, and we want to use that.
And just to be clear, I want to make sure our viewers understand this. We're not in a position of actually implementing policy changes. It is advisory, which means we have to work closely with MAC, we have to work with the FAA, and so, but it's a collaborative process, and this was an example where we're going to have some reduction in noise impact from the runway and do it in a balanced way.
Yeah. So I think you and the commission, as well as the residents who helped to make that proposal, can be proud that that was something that was accomplished. So
Right.
there's progress there.
Let's talk about water. Your update also mentioned that the council recently heard about the state of Eagan's water. We're talking about our drinking water supply. Tell us what the council was told about our water supply here in Eagan.
Well, and coincidentally, my Rotary Club just had a tour of one of Eagan's water treatment plants a week or so ago. And all of this was explained to us, everything that goes into assuring good quality water for Eagan. Occasionally we will get complaints from people that they don't think that the water tastes right, or it might have a slight smell, and there are various reasons for that. Those really aren't because of things that happen at those water plants. We have state-of-the-art water plants, and they do a great job of providing high-quality water. An advantage that we have is that we use well water here in Eagan. I know our neighbors to the west have had some issues with some of the surface water that they use, which a lot of treatment has to go into that to make it drinkable.
And Gary, when we say well water, we're talking about water in the ground that taps
From the
into
aquifer.
aquifers
That's
that
right.
are all, Minnesota is a
And-
very rich state in terms of its fresh water supply.
Yes.
And it tends to be clean to start with,
It
but
is.
you have to monitor it constantly to make sure it doesn't become contaminated.
And so that's the advantage that we have. It is water from the aquifer, but another challenge we have is it's hard water, and so people do need to make the effort to soften the water.
I buy my pellets down
Yeah.
at Ace Hardware all the time, put those in the water softener.
But you mentioned I do send out a monthly what I call city council update to a growing list of Eagan residents, and I started doing that after my first my last reelection campaign 4 years ago, when somebody suggested, I'd really like to know more about what's going on in the city. You ought to send out a newsletter. I said, hey, that's a great idea. And I picked up on it, and I find that it's been popular. People seem to enjoy it. I try to keep it a little lighter. I certainly don't get into any confidential issues, but I deal with topics that I think Eagan residents want to know about, and I'm getting good feedback on that. I believe in open and transparency. So that was a way that I felt that I could reach out to Eagan residents and just let them know what's going on with the council and with the city, and they seem to appreciate it.
And that's really important because, after all, you are a public servant. You are working for us, for the constituents, the people of the city of Eagan.
That's why transparency is important.
Right.
And some people that I have visited with at their front door when I've knocked on doors this campaign said, "Oh, I get your updates." So that's great.
I've, over my time and having worked in politics previously, I've knocked on my share of doors over many, many years on many different campaigns, and not just for candidates, but on issues that were on constitutional amendments and such over the years too. And I know how important that is. I say that when we're talking about local government, city council, state legislative races are won or lost on how intensively you're out there wearing out the shoe leather and talking to constituents and hearing what their concerns are.
And by going to meet with people at their front door, you give them that opportunity to express any concerns or any issues that they have. And I found that they really do appreciate that someone is willing to go and visit with them. I've heard the comment before, well, they'll take a look at my flyer and they'll look at the picture and they'll look at me and say, "Well, this is you. We never have a candidate come to our door to talk to us," So I've had some really good conversations. I thought maybe I would hear some criticisms, but I really haven't. Like I said, people love Eagan and they love living here, and so that's been really reaffirming to me in the job that we're doing.
That's a testament to your efforts and a lot of people who work for the city of Eagan and deliver good public services.
Yes.
Eagan has done a very good job in Dakota County too on holding the line on property tax increases compared to other communities. Say a word about that if you would. How is that possible in a time of raging inflation where we've had a couple of years recently where we've seen minimal, if any, property tax increases?
Well, and that's the first line on the results on my campaign flyer is that Eagan has the lowest property tax rate in the state of Minnesota among cities of its size when you consider the city and the school districts in the county together.
Where do we rank, Gary? How big is Eagan compared? Are we like 7th or 8th biggest city in the state
I think
now?
right now we're about 11th in the state. We're
Okay.
almost about 70,000 population.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, so it's
Those are our peers that we compare ourselves against, and we've done a great job of holding the line. When people ask me about my priorities, I always say, well, first and foremost, the priority has to be to continue to provide high quality service and be cost effective while we're doing it, because people want to know that their tax money is being used wisely, and I think we've done that. And that's been recognized. We're among a select group of cities nationwide who have AAA bond ratings from both Moody's and S&P. So that's
which is
that's
significant because it means if we do have to borrow money, that the amount it costs to borrow money is much less than it would be otherwise.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's very important.
Very significant. Let's talk for just a quick moment, if we could, about something that's been on the minds of a lot of people, and you and I have discussed this as well. Just the general state of our politics. We're living in a time of tremendous alienation, a lot of anger out there directed at elected officials. I'm happy to hear that you don't seem to be encountering much of that yourself personally at the doors, but I mean, just in the news today, we've seen the husband of the Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives was assaulted in his home in San Francisco. Yeah. It appears initially that this may have been a politically motivated assault in Paul Pelosi's home. But we're also hearing stories about threats against everybody from members of Congress to local school boards to city councils.
Yes.
Why do you think this is happening, and how do we get things back to a place where we can maybe not always see eye to eye, but at least disagree with each other in a civil manner?
And that really is the question, the first thing that I ask people when I approach them is, do you plan to vote? And if the answer is yes, then great, then the conversation starts. Unfortunately, too many have said, no, I'm not into partisan politics. And then I start talking about, well, what about local government, city and county? We run on a non-partisan basis. We don't have political endorsements when we run for office. Then they get interested because they like to hear about that. And more often than not, I've been able to convince them to vote at least locally. They might not vote for those partisan offices. But I also find it very interesting that people tend to ask me, well, what's your political affiliation? And then I say, well, we don't run with a political affiliation for city council. And that's usually good enough. But there is concern about that. We are so divided. And I think you get pigeonholed if you say, well, I'm one affiliation or another, then they'll draw conclusions about you, and I certainly don't want to get drawn into that conversation. We just need to be civil when we talk to people, and I think they appreciate that when, the fact that locally we run on a nonpartisan basis, then they seem to ease off a little bit, and then they're dealing with the individual and not a party.
Right.
So
there used to be something called Minnesota Nice, but unfortunately, even in some of the ads you see in our politics this election season, sometimes the worst angels of our nature get the better of us, and it's something we really have to watch out for, because it seems as if it may discourage some good people from running for office because they don't want to put up with that and their families don't want to put up with that. But we as a community, we as citizens miss out on that when we have good people who choose not to do public service.
Yeah, and we just need to take a step back and talk with each other. Let's communicate, let's be transparent, as I said before, with each other, and let's not get caught up in these partisan issues. It seems like you can make anything partisan these days, which it shouldn't be that way.
I've had the impression, and I have watched on Eagan TV sessions of the Eagan City Council.
You're the one who watches.
I'm one. I'm sure there are others. But when I watch it, I am struck by it's really a very collegial process that I sense that you don't always agree completely with each other, and you do come from your own personal political histories, but I also sense something else, that there is this attempt to collaborate and to work together and to try to come toward the middle. Don't you think that would help us a lot to get back to that more civil place where we need to be?
We leave politics at the door. You know, we're not falling back on partisan preferences when we make decisions regarding city council matters. Filling a pothole is not a Democrat or a Republican issue, you know.
The constituent says, I want the pothole filled.
And so you got to do that. Be responsive, get it done, and there shouldn't be anything political about that.
Right.
And so I think we've been quite successful as a group. The present council is very stable. Most of us have been on there for several years, and we've known.
You've served since 2008.
2008. I'm in my 14th year in the council, and I'm actually the 8th longest tenured council member in Eagan's history, believe it or not, with 14 years, and yet 3 of my council member mates have longer tenure than I do. So that's why I say we have a very stable council.
That's
and
remarkable.
we've gotten along well with each other, and we haven't been political with each other.
Gary, we're down to about our last minute and a half here, and before we close, I want to give you an opportunity to speak directly to the voters in Eagan. Why should they vote for you to be reelected to the Eagan City Council?
Well, my theme is experienced leadership for Eagan, and I've been on the council now for 14 years. I really enjoy it. I am retired. I have the time to devote to it. And I think the results that we've been able to achieve over the last several years speak for themselves. You know, and like I said, people love Eagan. They seem to appreciate the way we're doing things. I just want the opportunity to continue to be a member of the Eagan City Council and have a voice in how we do things in Eagan and help to get them done in the right way.
Mm-hmm. So. And it really is true, it seems. There's nothing like experience when you're dealing with some of the types of issues that come before city councils or the state legislature or other offices.
That's correct, yeah, and we're very fortunate to have an experienced council.
Really important. Gary Hansen of the Eagan City Council, thank you for joining us today on Access to Democracy. Good luck as you continue your door knocking, and we'll see you again on Access in the future.
Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you.